Mini episode 1512 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the start of the FDH Lounge series of NFL divisional previews in 2022. Today, we are tackling first and foremost the AFC East, and you have with you FDH Lounge original dignitaries Rick Morris and Chris Galloway. In this segment, we are going to tackle some macro-level issues at the outset for this season. Subsequently, at the top of every divisional preview, we'll just refer you back to this because we're just going to dive right into that division and get to it as far as the different storylines, narratives, all those juicy words to describe every division in the NFL this season. And I'm going to start with a column from Fantasy Football Draftology 2022, available on the main page of fantasydrafthelp.com from the FDH Lounge, fantasydrafthelp.com, and Sportsology. I have a column that postulates that this is sort of the beginning of the 2020 era of the NFL, that for historians like Chris and myself, it's popular for folks to speak of, well, the 60s really started with the Kennedy assassination, or the 2000s really started with 9/11. So I think if you look at it that way, there's a very good chance that when we look back on it, we'll look back at 2022 as the start of what we associate as the 2020s in the NFL. You have a lot of new TV teams this year. The number one teams at different networks. We've had an almost unprecedented amount of stability, but you've got Al Michaels moving over to Amazon Prime. Him and Herb Street are going to have the Thursday night games streaming exclusive. This is a huge sea change for the NFL with their Thursday night games. Tom Brady is the man in waiting at Fox, but Greg Olson, meantime, is going to be keeping the seat warm there. Him and Kevin Burkhardt are going to be the number one team on Fox for the next year, or likely two. You have the new Monday Night Football team of Buck and Aikman, fresh off of 2 decades at Fox Sports. So you got a lot of changes on the TV side. You have some off-field things here as well. We saw a lot of movement in the offseason, a lot of big money getting moved around. By the way, on the Deshaun Watson front, that is a big story in and of itself. But Chris and I already tackled that. FDH Lounge mini episodes 1459 and 1460. Including our own personal thoughts on the situation. Plenty of analysis there. But the movement of Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, players like that teams didn't want to pay. These megastar contracts when guys are coming up for the second big contract. A lot of movement there. Also off-field, you've got Discovery, I think, being a real bitch around the NFL here. You've got the Brian Flores lawsuit going on. John Gruden pursuing his lawsuit. So Daniel Snyder still shouldn't be sleeping very well, I would say, based on the Gruden one and what may still come out in that, especially the way that the NFL, did their little leak last year. Somebody at the NFL did to get rid of John Gruden and make him a distraction in that. And then, of course, the super loaded AFC. This is sort of like the NBA, the way that it was with the Western Conference. From the end of Jordan to the end of LeBron in the Eastern Conference, you had about a 20-year period there where the West was really dominant in the NBA. And now you have that in the NFL, which is rare. The AFC really towers over the NFC. So I may even be missing a few big factors here, Chris, but it looks to me like this is a season that heralds a lot of change in the league, even if I think there's a stability in terms of the top powers in the league. But I think that there's change in a lot of different areas of the league, and maybe things that we may not even notice from week to week, but we'll notice years later looking back on this.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that one of the things that I want to sort of bold prediction throw out there is that this year could end up being Bill Belichick's last.
Interesting.
I think privately Robert Kraft is tired of the Belichick way, and I think that seeing all these hot young new coaches all around the league doing well, explosive offenses, and meanwhile the Patriots don't have what amounts to even a top 50 wide receiver.
Yeah.
By all reports, Mac Jones is regressing to the point of the arrogance of Belichick to not even have an offensive coach in the building. They've not drafted well as of late, and I think that last year, although a really good coaching job, right, to get that team to where they got,
right,
just to get into the playoffs, I thought was something else. Although we all knew they were pretenders.
Right.
I think the Patriots are going to win 5 or 6 games this year.
Ooh.
And I think that Kraft is going to say, this ship is sinking, and I don't think he's going to wait. I don't think he's going to let Belichick try to right the ship for 3, 4, 5 years on his own terms. I don't think Kraft will tolerate it, because I think he's spending an exorbitant amount of money last offseason in free agents who, by and large, didn't deliver. And we all know, you and I questioned it last year, right?
Right.
The NFL adage was, you can't get better by adding tons of free agents. You get better, through the draft and through developing players. And then if you're one player away, you go out and you find them as a free agent kind of thing. That's always been the model that works. The mega dump of cash to just buy players, in part probably is what helped get them just into the playoffs. But none of that money really earned a return. So that's my kind of curveball prediction, is that this could be the end of the road for Belichick, that there are a lot of people in and around that organization that are just tired of him, and they have Belichick fatigue, including Kraft.
Very interesting, and you're really setting the case right now, early on here, for the looking at the AFC East, which we are going to do. I will say, in looking at this, and you've been kind of bold on predicting this previously. This is not the first time you've mentioned that there might be an expiration date on all of this. And before we get in further to the AFC East, I want to build on what you said by noting something here. And this is something I noted at the time in free agency. And yes, they dumped a whole bunch of money and everything like that, but it was sort of the poster child for what they were doing. A lot of the money, I think, went to Hunter Henry, as well as with another tight end at the time. It was like some nice players, but this wasn't the 97 Marlins as far as buying a championship, right? They were spending a lot of money, but you and I and a lot of people were looking at this at the time and going, this might be the market value for these players because they're in the right place at the right time. But that's not to say that they're really worth this amount of money. Anybody that looked at the caliber of guys they were bringing in was not shaking in their boots at what the Patriots had done. They spent a lot of money, but they spent a lot of money without there being a lot of real impact players in that bunch.
That's right. Again, they signed what I thought were just above average players.
Yes.
Right? Solid players, but not a bunch of Pro Bowlers.
Right.
Or maybe they're the kind of player that's going to make the Pro Bowl every 4 years, kind of.
Right.
Again, just above average players to premium deals. That's a lot of money to sink into just above average players. So B- players.
Right.
Good, but not game changing. And to your point, all the off season, ooh and ah by the press over what the Patriots did and the biggest, free agency spending in NFL history. It's like, yeah, but where's the Nick Chubb? Where's the Devontae Adams?
Right.
They didn't get anybody like that.
Right.
And so to your point, it was like I don't see the value. I think what they ended up getting was an upgrade in players in those positions. I think Matt Judon was a great signing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, they didn't get players that were going to get them beyond, say, just squeaking into the playoffs. And that's a lot of cap space and capital to assign to a bunch of guys that are just going to kind of get you there.
Absolutely. And like I said, the area that you're keying in on actually kind of leads directly into what this segment is going to be focusing on, the AFC East. And we're going to be doing this the same way we did last year. I think it did a lot to bring focus to our coverage of each division. I am borrowing from, once again, Fantasy Football Draftology, available on the main page of fantasydrafthelp.com. I have a feature called One Run-On Sentence for each AFC team, and I also do it for the NFC. So I go by division. So I'm going to give my run-on sentence for each team, and we can kind of react to that. Buffalo. The second consecutive postseason loss to KC, this past one being one of the worst losses in franchise history, and that's saying something for a team that dropped 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Leading to the signing of Von Miller indicates that the team is entering the now or never phase of this big run. No pressure. Miami. Raheem Mostert and company running the ball in Mike McDaniel's system should force single coverage on the team's explosive receivers. But the failure to utilize the admittedly sparse draft haul to reinforce the defense to a greater degree may sentence Tua to having to win a series of 35 to 31 games. New England, as the playoff blowout at Buffalo showed, years of poor drafting have yielded a ceiling just above mediocre, even if the established system provides a high floor, meaning that this year and the remainder of Belichick's career could be spent hugging either side of the 500 mark. The New York Jets, a very good draft, provided the first step towards digging this franchise out of its long-standing hole, but remaining holes on the offensive line and in the back seven, combined with a make-or-break year for Zach Wilson to show dramatic improvement, will see the team in last place yet again. So, spoiler alert on each division, this is the order, as we're going through them, that's the order that I see these teams finishing in each division. So, I do see Buffalo as the division winner, as does approximately 100% of the rest of America, and I do see Miami making it as a wild card. So, thoughts on what I said and didn't say about any of these teams, Chris?
Well, first let me just say I think you nailed it. The only thing I would say is I actually, because I am so down on the Patriots, I actually have the Jets eking it out into third place over the Patriots.
That's
I
incredible.
have the Patriots in last place.
Wow.
I like what the Jets did in the offseason. I liked the fight that team had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they won 4 games, they did beat the Bengals. They did, they showed up most weeks, not every week, but for a team with a lot of holes and young players and a lot of flaws, I thought they played hard.
Yes.
And as you'll see later on in my review of other divisions, I still think that matters. So, but obviously the Bills are by far and away the front runners. As long as Josh Allen stays healthy, they run away with the division. If they suddenly have to hand it over to Case Keenum for some reason, they're probably in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you in the Dolphins in second place in the division. I really like the offensive churn there, the new additions. Mostert looks great in the preseason from what little I've seen of him. Tyreek Hill, Waddle, it really changes some of the dynamic on that roster. That said, their flaws, their defense. They're going to have to draft hard into defense next year, but you don't rebuild and build overnight. Again, Jets loved the draft. I think they're making, I'm not sold on Saleh as a coach, but they do play hard, and I like their draft. And again, I think their biggest thing is they're battling with the Patriots all season to see that third and fourth place finisher. I just, like you, years of bad drafting and not having Tom Brady there is the world's largest Band-Aid, I think has them exposed. And I think last year I was not expecting playoffs of the Patriots at all. And they overperformed for what I thought they were going to be. I think it catches up with them finally this year.
I think that is very possible. I have the Jets at 6 wins, interestingly enough. So it's a thing where I have them as a last-place team with 6 wins, but I get the sense that you could see them as a third-place team with 6 wins based on the fact you think they'll be ahead of New England.
Yeah, I think the Jets are a 6 or 7 win team potentially, and I think the Patriots are a 5 or 6 win team. Now, does that mean the Pats and the Jets don't both go 6-11 and there's a tie break and maybe the Jets finish last? Maybe. I kind of have them both right around 6-11. So that's my thought process. I just have the Jets sort of with the tie break.
Yeah, it sounds like we're coming out in a lot of the same place in the division here. The last note that I have is that for Miami, I will say, and this is when I was going through the post-draft review, and I was not as kind to their defensive draft, but they were drafting in the areas that I thought they needed to draft in. So they were making picks that I regarded as being reaches, and I might have been a little bit more down on what some of the rest of the defense was coming back than they are internally. So this is one of these things where if I'm wrong and they're right, I think this is a legitimate team that could not only make the playoffs, but maybe even win a game or so, if they are right about that defensively. And it sounds like you kind of agree with me that they may still have some question marks there. But if they know more about it than we do, and sometimes that's right with teams, and sometimes we're the ones that are right. But if they're right, Chris, and we're wrong, then this team can do some damage.
Yeah, I think what you say is correct, other than the fact that I don't know that I would rely on first-year players to be a difference maker. It's okay if you're going to have a good defense, or even an offense for that matter. 1 or 2 rookies starting maybe is what you want at best.
Right.
If you're relying on a bunch of draft picks on the defensive side, they're just not going to be ready for the NFL. Exactly. Even if they end up being the Dolphins are right and you're wrong on say who they picked in those spots, it may not be 2 years 2 and 3 before they can be proved right. So I think from that standpoint, you will be proved right in year 1.
You're probably
that
right.
Makes sense in terms of the end result.
Yes, you're probably right. But generally speaking, I certainly like what they're doing there. I think McDaniels is going to take it in a good direction. I was not a fan of firing Flores, but I think they got a bright mind to replace him, and somebody who I think has an inventive mind and relates well to others. So in the medium term,
in that case, that Miami case is a great example of we're all shocked by the firing of Flores because we all look at it and go, man, we thought he did a great coaching job.
Sure.
With what he had, and I think that that's a true statement. But then we learned some things, or at least those in the building claimed that there were personality problems and toxicity and other things, and the organization felt like the coach was a part of a lot of that. So, and again, we're not privy to that, right?
Right.
We don't see it. So maybe inside that building, the rest of the world's like, boy, Brian Flores is great guy, great coach, and inside that building, they want to burn him in effigy.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that he's wrong and they're right. It just means the relationship isn't working, and it had to end, and so obviously it did. But it is a great reminder, I think, to fans. It's like, we don't know diddly, right, what goes on in those buildings, except for when it's all said and done, then finally people are willing to talk.
True. The one thing I will say is that you often cite this as an indicator, and I think that this is accurate when you do this. You look at how hard teams play. That team got buried kind of early on last year and came firing back. They never gave up. And generally speaking, again, a team that hates its coach probably doesn't rally back as much as they did. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, of course, but as I always say, law of averages, that's kind of what I go by. So as hard as they were playing, it's hard to believe there were that many people that really hated Brian Flores.
Well, to your point, the people that hated Brian Flores might not have been the players.
True. Yeah.
Again, I'm citing everything that we've heard after the fact is others within the building and the organization.
Right.
I didn't hear a lot of griping from players.
Right.
So to your point, I think you're right. I think the players respected him. I don't know that they necessarily liked him, but I mean, because we'll never know that.
Right.
But they certainly respected him. They played hard for him, which is why they finished the way they did within sort of an inferior roster, in our opinion. But anyway, to your point, in the end, Mike McDaniel, young offensive mind in that division, offensive mind in that division, and when Robert Kraft looks around and the Dolphins win, 5 more games than the Patriots. I think he's going to get ideas in his head about making a change.
Very possibly. Again, looking at this, you add a Tyreek Hill to having Waddle and the ability to take the top off the top here. And again, Tua is one of the players who's going to be most on the bubble here in the league this year to make it work with all of that talent there. But again, you're going to have to respect those wide receivers. You're going to probably have to single cover them a lot with the stable of running backs that they have in the backfield there. So yes, Miami, a very interesting team, one worth keeping an eye on. And in a very intriguing AFC East, and one that could be intriguing in a historical sense if you prove to be right, and if this is perhaps the beginning of the end of the era of Bill Belichick in the NFL. We shall see. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our preview of the AFC East in 2022.